Welcome to A Growing Concern. Tonight we're really concerned about an issue that's called the CRC, the Cascade River Crossing, or Columbia River Crossing, I guess, right?
Columbia
River Crossing. And it's something that has been going on for many years. I have my guest here tonight, Paul Edgar, who's a retired business consultant, and he's with an organization that opposes this. And we're trying to get the phones together to open them up. Hopefully folks can call us, later on in the program, whether they're for it or against it. We'd like to talk to people that are against it as well as people that agree with us. But we're going to go on for a while tonight about the many reasons to oppose this. And talking to Paul, I found out that there's an awful lot of reasons to oppose it. And there's a website that people can go to that's crcfacts.info, and we'll have that up as well during the program. Folks want to follow up on that. We've got a little video that we're going to play in about 6 minutes. It's probably going to cover a lot of what we're talking about, but it'll get away from the talking heads and get some visuals for people to check out. So we'll just move right into the program. Welcome to the program, Paul.
Well, thank you very much.
You've been very informative so far.
Well, the CRC project is something that I've been involved with for probably 12 to 15 years. So I've been tracking it, been involved with meetings.
Is that since the beginning then, pretty much?
Virtually from the beginning, from when I originally participated in the Metro Citizens Advisory Committee, which was a select group of people doing the 2020 plan with Metro. And it was then I became aware of the fact that the Port of Portland had proposed a port-to-port bridge connection to bypass the interstate bridges so that they could move trucks and freight between the two ports and get it into their system.
Just for trucks?
Just for trucks, but it was really the beginning of what we call a multi-mode type bridge. So it could handle cars. It could be been a pressure relief. If there was a problem on the interstate bridges, people could use it as a secondary route to get from Portland to Vancouver or from Vancouver to Portland.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's always been a bottleneck, and it always will be.
Well, the problem really is, if you really want to get logical about it, is you have to look at the whole corridor through Portland of I-5. In that corridor, if you start out on the south side, you have these Terwilliger curves. That's where trucks turn over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
makes the news.
It make the news, and the I-5 corridor is always clogged. So then you come down through there to a Markham Bridge, and the Markham Bridge, in fact, probably has more contingencies and earthquake-prone faults than even the interstate bridges have. And if you fall from up there, if it goes down in a major earthquake, you're really in trouble because you're a long way away from the water. Then you funnel that I-5 corridor to the East Bank section, and that is all 2 lanes, and it's just chaotic and accident prone, and nothing you can do about it.
Any time of the day, actually.
Absolutely. So then you go up through there, and you interface then with the I-84 interchange, and it's chaotic, and it has its problems. And then you go a little past that, and you getting off into the Lloyd Center areas or the Fremont Bridge. So that's where the corridor turns into a 3-lane corridor through that area, but that's all it's ever going to be. So we had what we call a transportation and trade partnership study. And during that study,
this was back in
this is actually back in the mid 2000s, 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a determination that the corridor would never be widened. So what you see right now is what you get. It's a 3-lane corridor. We used to have a choke point at Delta Park. We fixed that. But so the key to it is we could have 12 lanes crossing the bridge. But if anybody can picture a funnel, those lanes come down like this. In fact, a proposal that I've seen of the new CRC bridge at Hayden Island looks like it has 27 lanes across it. It wipes out Safeway, wipes out all of these businesses, homes, everything. It is just unbelievable, but it's and the loss of jobs, the loss of people's homes, the loss of land, it's just really tragic. So then you get to the I-5 bridge, and it has some of its problems, but his problems are really quite solvable.
You mean it can be that particular infrastructure could be repaired rather than building a new bridge?
Well, it's a National Historic Bridge. It's got all of the clearances necessary for Pearson Airfield on the Washington side. It has all of the height clearances, so all the river freight can go up and down the river. Its key problem is that you have these on and off ramps at Hayden Island. And the new highway specs tell us that those ramps or on and off ramps should not be there. And when people are trying to get on at Hayden Island going north, they impact all the traffic that's in the I-5 corridor. Mm-hmm. And then you have people that are, and they create a lot of problems. The people coming south in the morning from Washington, you have a high percentage of those people in the middle lane trying to get over into the far right lane, and the far right lane has got their brakes on, anticipating turning off. And so those two lanes operate at maybe 50 or 30% of capacity. And that's just because that ramp to get off onto Hayden Island's there. If you were to have taken that traffic down towards the Expo Center and then routed it back to the Hayden Island on a new ramp over to Hayden Island, I could almost double the amount of cars that go across the I-5 bridge and reduce 90% of the accidents on the bridge.
And the congestion when
they congestion. So this means that the flow of traffic, and then that balances that 3 lanes up with identically the same 3 lanes of capacity that we have in I-5 anyway. So we could build the biggest bridge in the world, but we only have 3 lanes in each direction on I-5.
After it gets to either Washington or Oregon.
That's right. That's right. So the key is that even if I tried to replace the bridges, what do I get? I don't get any really improvements, but what I do get is this enormous financing. So the financing equation is one that we really have to be careful about. And to finance it, we have to put out a lot of bonds, and each state is supposed to give $450 million. Well, state of Oregon doesn't have $450 million. State of Washington doesn't have $450 million. And the federal government said, we'll step in if light rail is on there, and we will put in $850 million to cover the part of light rail. Well, they don't have that money either, so they can't fund the $850 million based upon the track record of what's happening in Washington, D.C. in the Congress. So we got problems.
So the only way to get the federal involved would be to add a light rail to that?
Well, that's what they want. That's part of the key reasons to have light rail on the bridge. But the state of Washington, and particularly the residents, have already voted that not to support or fund light rail coming into Vancouver. So they don't want it. In fact, the Clark County Commission just recently voted to a statement saying that they do not support the I-5 bridge and light rail coming into Vancouver.
So if the other half of that, which that would be, why is Oregon even bothering to? In Salem, it just passed out of committee this week.
Yes, it did.
And they're going to vote on that, and it looks like it could pass. So aren't they kind of spitting in the wind if there's nowhere to put it on the other side?
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, this might put a lot of the cost or burden literally on the back of the citizens of Oregon, and they won't have any ability to pay it off. So this paying off is a key thing. So a high amount of the 3.45 million that is being proposed right now is the project, and that is really understated, because historically on major or mega projects, ODOT has gone 130 to 160% over budget virtually on every project. So we could look at this project. A senior consultant that was once the senior economist to the governor of the state of Oregon, Joseph Courtright, told us that this project will probably cost the ratepayers, the treasuries, the toll-paying public $10 billion. $10 billion. That's a lot of money. And just think of $10 billion sponge sucking money out of everybody's pocket, and particularly the poor. So there's 60,000 commuters in the I-5 corridor, usually on an average day. And many of
Going
those...
north and south?
Yeah, but most of them are southbound. And of those, a high percentage of them are really in that $40,000 and below bracket. These are people who are working close to the to everything, paycheck to paycheck. And now there is a probability that with lower trip counts, and the trip counts are important because people are driving less. There's less miles being used by everyone, and less trips being generated because the cost of gasoline is high.
Right, yeah.
So what's happening is they want to generate revenue based on tolls. Well, people are driving less. So if you get a high toll on the bridge, on this new proposed I-5 bridge, and with their financing, you could have tolls in a very short period of time at $8 per trip one way. That could be $16 a day for a low-income family.
$80 a week.
That's taking money right out of their pockets, right off of the table, right off their ability to support their families. Okay, so somebody said, well, those people will jump on light rail. Well, we did an analysis of the I-5 corridor. Only 1% of the people in the I-5 corridor presently use mass transit. And C-Tran has an excellent express bus service out of 134th that runs into Portland. But the problem with that is that you got to get the people from the terminus of these transit centers to their place of employment. Well, we don't have buses that connect. So
you don't have much of a bus system there in Vancouver?
Oh, we have a good bus service, but we don't have a bus service in Portland. So they're reducing bus services, and we don't have any ability to get people from a light rail or express bus in Portland to their places of employment. Mm-hmm. So these people that can't do that are in real trouble. So this means that the other big variable in why people will or will not use transit or mass transit methods is time, the amount of time that it takes.
Right, yeah.
So if the time that it takes to ride a light rail or a bus system is double or triple what you could do with a car, mm-hmm. people will say, my time is worth something, my grievances, my hassle, I'll just drive. And that's been in fact the case. So when the hassle level and the time level becomes so much greater, it becomes a disincentive for people to use transit in that corridor. And that's actually been the case. And it doesn't look like there's anything about what is being proposed with expanding light rail into Vancouver that will correct that.
I think that mass transit has got to be the answer as populations get bigger and the carbon footprints and the cost of gas. So it would seem to me that I hear what you're saying, but it would seem to me that getting the mass transit across the river into Vancouver would be a real step forward. But it's not being done in such a way that it's feasible. Then you're saying
that's right. Right now, it doesn't pencil out. And you have to use weighted values, so they call it weighted value decision processing. And it's a methodology where you create criteria, you put a value on each of the criteria, and you say, how does that play out to the people that are making their minds up about what they want to do? And those people that use any type of serious critical thinking process will come up with saying, hey, it's just not justified. And now there's another equation to this, and a lot of people don't realize it. Vancouver, like Portland, still has some problems with crime. But when you start comparing their crime rates with crime rates like in Gresham, where we have mass transit, or Clackamas Town Center, The area around Clackamas Town Center now has been nicknamed Felony Flats.
It's been that way long before the mass transit came in, though.
Yeah, but it's got worse.
Has it gotten worse?
A lot worse. So the county sheriff now can measure, that's all unincorporated Clackamas County, serviced by the Clackamas County Sheriff, and we can identify this radical spike in uptick of crime. The same thing is true in Gresham. Recently, a new study came out that showed Gresham had 25% increase in crime over national averages, and in Portland was in the same area. So they have gone back and extrapolated out those areas where they're having it, and most of those areas are associated with the light rail line.
Has any studies been taken, like comparing it to like BART in San Francisco and any of these just out of curiosity?
Well, we've got our gangs and crime and people get on, but what we found like at the Clackamas Town Center with light rail is that when people can break into a car, like at the Clackamas Town Center, steal something out, then they go up, get on the light rail train, they shoot out. They can't hardly track them at which stop they get off, and then they can fence off their stuff that they've stolen. And it moves very fast, and so it really makes it extremely difficult on the sheriff's department and police as a whole to try to crack it down. So they found it to be this escape vehicle of great importance to those people who want to use it for that type of activity.
You say they. Who has found this?
Well, the crime element.
I know, but who has discovered? Who has made these connections? You say they have found. Is this like police studies?
Well, the police, the police are trying to figure out how do we catch these people? Where do they go? And we know that a lot of them aren't in cars. They've been used to this thing. So the other thing about light rail is to make light rail really effective. One of the key parts of it is building transit center housing. So this is where you create, you take and take over lands, a lot of times through even methods of eminent domain, where the government comes in and says, we want to redevelop this area in and around wherever we have a transit stop, so that people then, we can put high-rise housing. Well, you get into suburban areas, and I call Vancouver a suburban area of Portland. They've been really safe and not worried about this type of stuff, and so when they evaluate, if you're living in Vancouver and you say, well, do I want to create this passageway to where another element can come into our families, our neighborhoods, and create chaos? Is that really what we want? And at the ballot box, well, this is really not for us, you or I, to decide. But the Vancouver people have been voting, saying from their family's perspective that they don't want that in their neighborhood.
Well, that brings up a good point. So if the people in Vancouver can vote yes or no, why is Salem voting yes or no for Oregon?
Well, the
dynamics of that.
Well, I know, they just don't know. I went up and testified before the joint House and Senate committee that met on this bill in Oregon called 2800. And I was there when the governor made his pitch for it.
He's for it then?
Yeah.
The present governor.
The governor of Oregon made it, but it's funny when they have not read the fine print. They have not seen this bill truly is a Christmas tree bill. It has tacked onto it all sorts of crazy things that spend money all the way up into the Dalles.
To please certain constituents here.
It's even to build a whole new office buildings for TriMet.
It's kind of like pork then.
Oh, it's a pork-laden piece of legislation for everything, and then, oh, by the way, we're going to build a bridge and light rail. And the rest of it is it has a lot to do with virtually patronage, and it's really in some cases people might think it's criminal. So, but that's the way it is in the real world.
That kind of was a segue into what I was going to go next. Now, you say that they're not reading all the fine print, but all this that you're talking about is out there.
Well,
and so, what are they? Where are they coming from, and what are they saying are so positive about this that it it's more positive than these negatives you're talking about.
Well, see,
it just doesn't make sense.
well, what you have is you have a lot of people that want to create what we call Davis-Bacon type jobs. Okay, these are prevailing wage jobs, but historically, whenever we did these, and these metalworking jobs and things like this, a high percentage, more than 50% of all of the workforce is not from this region. So they're not local jobs, and people don't understand
You're talking
that.
about the construction.
Construction jobs. These are specialty workers that come in from all over. They'll come in from California. They'll come in from East Coast. They'll come in from Colorado. They'll come in from all of these areas because they have that specialty trade certification.
Mm-hmm.
They're like a pipe welder. When you have to be certified to be a pipe welder at a high level. Not anybody that can weld be a pipe welder. So
the same thing with the burners that make up the plates and all.
Absolutely.
That.
So these people that come in will be specialties, and so everybody talks about what the jobs are. But the real thing around this thing is the money changers. And the money changers are the people at the big end. These are people that come along and say, okay, you mean we're going to set up a tolling authority? The tolling authority has had an initial estimate of around $1.7 billion in just administering the tolls, just administering the tolling apparatus. And most people agree that tolling administration, because of will probably be $3 billion. Then we start collecting the tolls. And so this means that out of this $8 tolls, only a small amount of that goes to the principal. The rest of it all goes to the money changers, the people that are there that are playing around on the backside and spinning their wheels. This is part of the sponge that's going to be sucking out of our local economy approximately $10 billion. Now, when you start sucking that money out, and these money changers and people are out there, they're getting rich. It's like the rich getting richer. The corporate geniuses up at the tops, they want to get a piece of that. Some of these big construction companies, yes, but a lot of their money filters back out to the stock exchange and to the money makers that have invested into them. So it's not money that comes back into Oregon economy or Washington economy, our regional economy. It's money that's sucked out of here by the money changers and goes to other places. Now, I'm in favor, and I sit on an urban renewal commission myself personally, where I'm working to try to create jobs and investment in the state of Oregon. I've done the same thing in the state of Washington. And this is not like an urban renewal commission. This is for the big boys, the rich and the famous, who want to suck out our monies for their special causes, not for the average homeowner.
The rich and the anonymous in most cases, probably, because a lot of these people you probably have to dig around to find out who they are.
But a key part of this problem is that if, let's say, you're in Washington and you're a part of the working poor, and you're trying to commute into Oregon, and all of a sudden you have an $8 toll, one way, $16 a day, and you're worried about putting food on the table of your family.
It's $300 a month gone.
That's right. What would you do? Well, all of a sudden I'm going to say, maybe I should look at the Glenn Jackson Bridge in I-205.
Which has a connection on SB 14.
Yeah, so I go a little bit east, I get there, but I get into Oregon now free. I can get back free. But a lot of those people may end up wanting to get on I-84, up at the I-84
Until
exchange.
they try it.
Yeah. Well, that's chaos. Mm-hmm. It's chaos right now. It's right at capacity. We're sitting at level of service, and this is a calculational method that they use for determining what we call impedance in driving. So this driving here is at level of service D right now. Some D to F, just about. It's really, F is failing. It's as bad as you get in the scale.
Well, in the morning and the evening, it's failing.
Absolutely. So if we start converting all those people around, and they start doing that, then we have less people paying tolls, trying to get across the bridge.
So the toll goes up.
The toll goes up because people have diverted their trips away, so they have to ever increase the toll to pay the bonds. And if you get to a point where we don't have enough revenue to pay the bonds, who pays it for it? The general fund. So it comes right out, just like money away from education, from the police, from everything. So
general fund out of Salem and Olympia both.
And out of Salem and Olympia both. So all of a sudden we go into super high deficit types of environments because we have not generated the funds. So then they said, well, what we need to do is put a toll on the Glen Jackson Bridge. So if we put a toll on the Glen Jackson Bridge or the I-205 corridor, what does that mean? Well, all of a sudden, it's part of the solution. You really can't toll one corridor or one bridge without tolling the other one. Pretty soon you're tolling all of the Portland metro area. We have to start creating tolls. Now, everyone here is paying maybe a lot less toll, because if I start charging, I could probably charge $3 or $2 a trip for everyone if I'm tolling every corridor. But do you want to be in Oregon City or Beaverton or someplace else and pay a toll for a Columbia River crossing that was never justified in the first place? Is that really what you want to do?
No.
Okay, and now all of a sudden I'm also increasing my costs of doing business. So when I was back in product planning world, in business world, we had what we called a material, labor, and burden, MLB. And that's from that we determined our costs. And then we added markup on top of that, and that gave us a retail price or a marketing price. Well, what happens is when we increase our costs, transportation costs, all of a sudden our costs of goods, and all of a sudden Oregon market is not as competitive. Now businesses that look and say, well, should I locate my business here? Well, no. I can go someplace else where I don't have to pay those tolls. So all of a sudden, and those tolls are tacked on to every product and every service we have. And so families all over, everywhere, will be picking up a tab to cover this. And there's really, if they were to go ahead and this thing happened, it is going to create total chaos. And most of these people here were never made aware of the fact that this will probably have to lead to a total tolling of this Portland metropolitan area to make it work, or otherwise everything fails.
I can't believe that the folks that are proponents of this, they know that it will.
Well, I honestly think a lot of the proponents of it have never read the fine print. They're not really transportation or systems people.
They don't understand the dynamics.
They don't understand the dynamics, and God bless them. You know, they're doing the best they can, but sometimes if you're paid or you're elected yourself to a position to where you have that responsibility to make intelligent and informed decisions, and you don't know this, then shame on you, because you're making a decision based on the lack of proper information, and you are not prepared. And there are a lot of these people. So when I was down in Salem and I'm watching people down there, I'm going to tell you, my personal opinion was that 9 out of 10 of them were not prepared. 9 out of 10
meaning the legislature.
And our elected people in the legislature did not know the true impacts of what they were voting for. They just heard a line of, in my case, I'm going to call it BS, okay, coming down from high above. And they react to it and say, oh, who's telling me this? Well, I'm going to tell you that what they told you was a partial truth, with the majority of it not really relevant, in fact, highly negative on the families of this area.
Lipstick on a pig, bro.
Oh yeah. We once heard that. Put a little lipstick on a pig, and this is
that's right.
This is a real good analogy of a project that we might call a pig, and somebody's putting a lot of lipstick on it, or grease, and they're trying to grease it through.
Right. Well, you know, the electorate, Peace People campaign that we send into Salem, and they are elected to office, and they get a budget in order to have aides and people that can study these issues for them. So there's no excuse for them not to know. seems like to me.
I know that, but
That's what we're paying them to do.
well, it's kind of like
You're more generous than I am, apparently.
well, I know, but you have to have some degree of common sense, and a lot of times it's not you've got to have this mix of analytical skills and common sense. And I know a lot of the engineers and people that I worked with in research and development teams. They were some of the most brilliant people in the world, but they had zero common sense. And so that's the reason why they would have people like myself as a project manager over them, because we were supposed to bring in the level of common sense to make sure that these projects actually penciled out. They actually made sense. They actually fit the marketplace.
Let's see. Well, you know, we've talked for almost half an hour now, and on that website, crcfacts.info, there's a little 6-minute clip that'll give a lot of visuals, you know, that'll go along with what we've talked about here. So if we can't get that up, we may not be able to get it up this 1 second, but get folks in the control room to work on that. And then we'll listen to that, and we'll come back. We'll still have plenty of time to continue the conversation.
Be great.
All right, looking forward to it.
What is the Columbia River Crossing?
All right.
Some people call it the CRC. Others call it the I-5 Bridge Project. And many other people call it the Tolling and Light Rail Boondoggle. In a recent Supreme Court ruling, the Chief Justice of Oregon's Supreme Court called the Columbia River Crossing light rail in search of a bridge. Actually, it's all of the above, and much more. In the next few minutes, a group of committed citizens will inform you of a small sampling of the long-term damage this political cash cow will cause in Southwest Washington.
Did you know that the CRC project has spent over $160 million in planning? This is 3 times more than the original budget called for. The result is a plan proven to be materially deficient in solving traffic and freight congestion problems in the I-5 corridor. Did you know that state and federal regulations have been ignored, especially in how key contractors have been hired for this project? As I have worked to piece together the facts of the CRC financial matters, it has been difficult. Currently, $20 million is unaccounted for. The CRC's records are unorganized and incomplete. They are unable to print appropriate accounting-related documents that would show us where the money is being spent. Appropriate accounting and transparency is missing from this project.
Did you know we've had a good 20 years of revitalized growth in our downtown? But the 6+ years of construction will seriously harm our small businesses. Traffic detours will choke customers' access. Construction will interrupt utilities and communications. And we will lose over 130 on-street parking spaces to light rail, which will dominate over 25 blocks of our downtown.
Did you know most of the jobs related to the CRC construction will not benefit our community? The majority of jobs will be union labor, tied to contractors, and locals won't stand much of a chance. In fact, many jobs will be lost in the Vancouver area based on disruptions to local businesses. Even if some local citizens participate, these jobs will soon be lost when this poorly conceived megaproject is complete. However, tolls and taxes will be with us for generations to come.
Did you know the CRC's cost estimates of $3.5 billion are over 3 times what they should be to solve actual I-5 corridor transportation needs? The cost should be around $1.2 billion for a proper project without the staggering cost of light rail. Independent analysts question CRC's $3.5 billion estimate, as it does not include debt servicing and typical mega project cost overruns. They estimate the initial CRC project be up to $10 billion. The difference between the CRC plan and an affordable bridge is huge. If the CRC project proceeds, it will be devastating to Southwest Washington for many decades to come.
Did you know The CRC bridge design cannot relieve current traffic congestion. There will be 3 lanes of traffic in each direction, even though extra lanes are planned on the bridge to handle the interchange traffic. Through traffic will have the same 3 lanes we have now. The CRC project does not relieve traffic choke points a few miles south of the bridge, which is the big congestion factor. No rational analysis leads to the conclusion that this project, as planned, can reduce our traffic congestion as stated. And finally, there is no data that suggests the proposed light rail component will relieve the traffic in the slightest.
Did you know that tolls will be required to partially cover the enormous cost of the bridge project? This is not good news for the average interstate commuter who will pay more than $2,000 per year for those tolls. Our people at Global Security take approximately 20 trips, round trips per week, and I know I'll be reimbursing them for all those trips, so it's going to be costly here. We will also be dealing for many years with a great big construction project in our front yard. Make it difficult for not only my people to cross, but all vendors, all commuters, all families to cross that I-5 bridge during the construction.
Did you know that light rail has had the effect of importing crime and gangs into our cities and neighborhoods? When light rail moves through the cities into the suburbs, it has the potential problem of importing crime and moving it from one area to another. This has happened in Gresham and around the Clackamas Town Center. When we've seen light rail introduced, crime has increased in some cases by 25%. The proposed light rail coming into Vancouver and into our neighborhoods could bring the same problems in. Is that really what we want?
We hope you'll consider the disastrous impact of this flawed project and join us in our effort to inform our community before it's too late. You're probably thinking, who are we? We are taxpayers, commuters, struggling business owners and their customers, homeowners, and potential victims of rising crime. We are your friends and neighbors. In short, we are the beginning of the informed community, and our strength is in our numbers. We invite you to join us.
All right. I thought that was very interesting. Everybody that was interviewed there, yourself included, were just dressed in street clothes. They were just everyday folks. There was nobody there in suits. It was just the people that are going to be affected by it on the street level. And
Well,
that's really important. And that's all on Vancouver's side, but one could also do the same thing for the Oregon side as well.
absolutely. Hayden Island is going to be devastated. The Safeway store will go, and all of the shops on virtually both sides. Hooters, everything
Well,
along.
that'd be devastating to some people.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And so on both sides through that area, but it will have, and when it gets across into Vancouver, I-14 or the 14, a key route, north-south route, east-west route, right along the Columbia River, will be severed during construction for 2 years if this bridge is built. And this will have devastating effects on, Fred Meyer's got a shopping center right there, and that people will not be able to get in and out of. People trying to use I-5 will not be able to use it just to go east. Or people from the east getting onto this will not be able to use it. So
They'll have to go further north off I-205 and cut back around.
Oh, absolutely. But it will create a lot of what I call back alley transportation thinking. And that's not going to be good for anybody. It's going to create dangers and accidents. There's going to be lives lost through this action. So there's a lot of side things.
Increasing traffic on streets that weren't made to cover that.
Oh, absolutely.
To carry that much traffic.
Well, there's the other big problem is the bridge proposal for this I-5 bridge is much higher. It's like 116 feet.
Off the water.
Off the water. Well, off the mean water level. So here we got a problem is we're having right now a tremendous growth of river construction jobs, high paying metal fabrication jobs that are right down along the river. And they're creating a product that needs greater height than 116 feet. Recently, some of those places of employment have gone from 100, 200, 300, 400 jobs, and we're talking at the high spectrum of the pay scale. Those jobs will be lost.
Which jobs are these again?
These are metalworking jobs.
That are building the bridge?
No, these are jobs that are free enterprise jobs in Washington. Most of them are at the old Kaiser shipyards.
Right, I got you.
In there. And so we are losing all of the jobs from Safeway. We're losing all the jobs from all of the retail stores around there, from McDonald's and from everybody through there. All of those jobs in the Oregon side will be gone. And we're losing all these houses, boathouses and places along through there. So the impact of this in jobs is going to be probably, people have estimated, it's going to cost 2,000 or 3,000 jobs. Currently permanent family wage jobs that we now have will disappear as a result of the bridge.
So proponents for this, proponents for any kind of thing, are always say this is going to create jobs, but those are temporary jobs, and they're not talking about the permanent jobs that will be lost along the way. It's collateral damage.
Yeah, and it's there are a lot of the jobs that will be made during the construction, which are just jobs from out of state.
Yeah.
And these are specialty workers. They're going to come in and do it, but they're not going to really bring the benefits that we want to our communities. Because they're not married to Oregon or Washington or Vancouver or Portland. They're here. They're basically carpetbaggers coming in, and they have a carpetbagger mentality. And I'm sorry, but that's the way it really is.
That's generally the way it is when you're dealing with any kind of issue, like with the LNG, the liquefied natural gas installations in the pipelines, or the Nestle wanting to bottle our water. This money is mainly all going to be going out of state.
Well, absolutely.
And it's the same thing. There's people in, all your big box stores, Walmart, all that money goes into those stores and they go to other states.
Now,
and this is just another example
now,
of that.
the key to this thing, though, is that there are alternatives. A very viable...
That's a good way to spend the last 15 minutes.
Very viable alternatives to the Columbia River crossing. And one of those viable alternatives is really going west. And that's right now we have recently got federal stimulus money and have 2 big railroad trains that will be delivered and owned by the state of Oregon. And we've been doing a passenger rail study, but to try to figure out how we're going to improve passenger rail up and down the corridor from up to Vancouver, Canada. But there's this choke point called the Burlington Northern Swing Railroad Bridge, built in 1907 and 1908.
And that's west of
that's west. That bridge truly is only 2 tracks on it. And right now it inhibits freight rail, critical to our economy in holding and creating new jobs.
So north and south are sharing the same
and
rail.
Passenger rail. Well, we can't they want to put more passenger rail on there, and we can't even do the job right now with freight rail. And that's hurting us. So the pragmatic thing, the smart thing to do, would be to go over there and fix that problem. And when you fix that problem, it also creates a new alternative to fix the riverboat business, because we bring a lot of freight down up and down the Columbia River. And when it comes through the bridge, there's most of it's barge. And the barges go through a high spot on the I-5 bridges, so they don't have to lift the lift span. And so the tugboats and everything are set up to do this. But then they do a complete S-curve over and go to the Washington side to go where the swing part of the railroad bridge is. And so when they do this all the time, it creates a lot of navigational problems, major accidents. It's a problem area of great proportion. So if we fix the railroad bridge, the logical thing to fix it, and the cheapest thing, is to replace it. And if you replace it with a multi-mode railroad, passenger rail, could have light rail on it too. So I could swing a light rail around via the Expo Center onto this bridge and into Vancouver. But then on the top deck, it'd be like the steel bridge, where you look at the steel bridge, you've got a rail on the bottom, light rail, trucks, cars, everything on it, and you have a lift span. Well, vision that over there on replacing the Burlington Northern Swing Railroad Bridge, and we get 4 railroad tracks or 6 or 8, whatever we want, that's right for our area. But normally we would have 2 for passenger rail, 1 going and coming for high-speed passenger rail, and then have 4 tracks for freight rail. Okay.
Could that be used for people commuting from
Oh,
Vancouver?
absolutely. So if I'm in Washington, I could be taking Mill Plain or 4th Plain or 78th or 99th, and I go over to Fruit Valley Road, and that would connect me really right onto this. And it's a road that goes north-south, and it would connect right up, right next to the railroad tracks. And so you could take that, and I could connect onto that, and then that I could go right across into Oregon. And then on the Oregon side, there's what we call the Portland Street Corridor, right along next to the railroad tracks. And it cuts right through all the way where there's a railroad bridge cutting across the Willamette to Highway 30 and going into industrial Northwest Portland. So that goes through a cut right by St. John's. Right now, all of this trucks that need to get out of the Rivergate area a lot of them go through St. John's, right through the town center. It's chaos. And so these trucks would now be able to get onto this new corridor, go all the way under the railroad tracks, all the way into the Northwest Portland, or we could create a path for them out to I-5 someplace. But what we're trying to do is the I-5 corridor is only 3 lanes in each direction anyway. So we want to get as many trucks as we can out of the I-5 corridor. So this is going to do a big job of doing that. Now then the next alternative that's of real promise is to go out to I-205. The I-205 corridor was built for 4 lanes in each direction. Right now, some of it's 2 lanes, some of it is, most of it's 3 lanes. But if you were from Oregon City all the way to SR 500, virtually all of the overpasses are already built. So I don't even have to replace an overpass to create 4 lanes.
So you're talking about putting a bridge there instead of I-5?
No. What I do is the 205 bridge would handle it. So all I do is I start moving the truck traffic away from I-5 where it should be anyway. Why do I want to pump interstate truck traffic through the downtown Portland? That's crazy.
There's no reason for it.
No, that truck traffic should all be on 205. So we should be making I-205 the primary freight corridor through the Portland region.
Well, let's think that's why it was designed, wasn't
Well,
it?
absolutely it was designed that way. But what they have been doing purposefully, and where I'm talking about ODOT, they have failed to widen, as an example, I-5 or I-205 from Stafford, which is the kind of just a little bit west of
where it comes into I-5.
of West Lynn. Okay, so you go from I-5 off on 205 and you get to the Stafford deal. Then it turns to 2 lanes all the way along by the side of West Lynn, and then you go across the Abernathy Bridge, which is in Oregon City.
Into Oregon City, yeah.
So this area through there should have been corrected. They haven't. And the reason why, if you correct it and all the trucks flow that way, then there won't be a priority to fix I-5. So they kind of like say, it's like if I'm trying to leverage somebody in a school saying, we got problems there, but one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to cut sports. We're going to cut all football, baseball, everything. And so they get everybody's attention, because that's a hot button issue for a lot of parents. They want to keep their kids active. And so what we're really doing here is we're playing politics. We're doing a lot of politics, playing a lot of politics. But the key in the politics in this thing has been really, everybody's said honestly about the Columbia River crossing, it was really to be a light rail bridge, light rail path. And so it was looking for a bridge to put it on. And so the long-term plan was never there was a justification for this. So you just wanted to get light rail into Vancouver. Now, the accidents, people say there's accidents that slow down in the I-5 bridges. Well, I told you earlier, we could correct a lot of that by just eliminating the on-off ramps just before out of Hayden Island. But in addition to that, one of the other problems with the I-5 bridges is people have this preconception that it's earthquake going to tumble down in a major earthquake. Well, that's false. I would categorically false. The bridges were surveyed. They've been identified as solid as could be. The steel in them is great. But if somebody wants to do a greater job of making the bridges more seismic stable, that can be done for pennies on a dollar.
Compared to what it's going to cost.
Yeah, compared to placing $8 tolls and not solving anything. Because if I do that, I really don't solve the congestion problems of the I-5 corridor. I don't solve anything. I just move them a little further away from the bridge. But they're still there. I may have the biggest parking lot that you've ever seen in your life, 24 lanes wide, sitting on top of Hayden Island. And this is all these people coming across the bridge trying to squeeze into a 3-lane corridor. That's literally what it could end up being if they correct some of the tolls. But if they don't correct that, we could have this whole Portland area all tolled up tight. And is that really what we want? Do we want to really decrease our ability to be competitive in the job creation market? And that's what that will do. It will destroy free and open trade between Vancouver and Portland, between Washington and Oregon.
And it might affect the desire of other companies to locate here as well.
Oh, absolutely. But it's also going to cause a lot of heartache and heartbreak for a lot of families. And these are families that are being caught up in this trap. They don't have any traction. They don't have any ability virtually to have anything to say in this thing. And what they're going to be done, what's going to happen to them is they're going to be sitting there saying, should I walk away from my home in Vancouver? Should I go on public assistance? What should I do? I can't afford to have a minimum wage job paying high fees of gasoline. Oh, Washington wants to increase to pay for their $450 million of funding for the CRC. They want to up the gas tax in Washington 10 cents a gallon. Now, you think that's going to fly in this economy?
Yeah, that's a permanent 10 cents.
That's a
as
permanent.
Opposed to the up and down.
That's a permanent. You think that's going to fly? It's like these people are crazy. That we have so many people that are illogically, without common sense, not thinking through all of these ramifications, and it scares me because they should know better.
Well, I agree with that. It seems to me this whole situation, this bridge and all that, it's kind of like a one-size-fits-all solution, whereas what you're talking about is you peel off some of the components of the problem, i.e. the truck or whatever, and you deal with them separately, and it would solve the problem in smaller pieces here and there.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what I'm getting, what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely. So I could be incrementally fixing I-205 and getting a lot of trucks out of the I-5 corridor and creating lots of jobs in Clackamas area, Clackamas industrial areas, Oregon City, Wilsonville.
Maybe a truck stop down
and I could get Jubits to come out to Clackamas. I know a guy out there, Terry Emmerich. Terry would be very happy to help them find land along I-205 that would work for putting a major truck stop right there close to Safeway and Fred Meyer warehouses, where all these trucks are going anyway. So why not do that? We're building a new Sunrise Corridor out to 26 through Damascus. Well, that's going to be a critical place for a lot of people who are trying to get their truck traffic out of Portland, this area, out over the mountains. So this is a good place where they could do it. But we should be looking at the I-205 corridor. Then when we get over to the west, wow, this area where we could replace the railroad bridge, solve the railroad freight and passenger rail problems, even light rail, and where we could increase, where we can have cars, trucks, bikes. There's so many people that are biking, and there's beautiful bike trails when I get across the in Rivergate area, where the bikers then could flow directly into town. So this is and keep them off of these areas where there's danger to their health, because there's a lot of stupid people that are behind the wheel. Not the bikers. The bikers can do pretty good.
In fact, when I Googled opposition to this CRC, one of the websites that came up, I forget what it was now, but it was a bike some kind of organization that had a website that had to do with a bike. The bikers.
Well, absolutely. And these people have
among
done,
others. There was a few others as well.
Well, I've always been impressed with the number of people that are now biking and not clogging our roads, because kind of in an environmental way, these people are no longer burning up all the gas in the world. We don't have to pave the world over. Their carbon footprint is really what we hope to see.
And they're healthier.
They're healthier. Absolutely. So they're doing their part. And some people are saying, well, let's put a great big tax on their back because these people are not paying their fair share. Well, I can understand a little of that, but I'm going to tell you, when you have to add another lane or 2 lanes on a freeway, we're talking in the billions. And so when we get these people start cutting back our needs, it's like when we start cutting back our water usage in Portland, and then all of a sudden they say, oh my gosh, we're not getting enough revenue, we have to up the rate.
Yeah,
okay.
We got 2 minutes here.
Okay,
so yeah, that's typically how it goes. And I think that as far as the bike thing goes, I mean, if these folks are healthier, then we're going to have less healthcare issues.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
you can't just look at it here. And that seems to me what's going on with this bridge, from everything you've been talking about, is they're looking at it as a problem like this and not really looking at it, backing up and looking at the consequences of that.
Well,
so we got about a minute to finish up here.
Well, there's a forum in Vancouver.
I meant to bring that up. Good job.
A forum in Vancouver Monday, February 25th at 7 p.m. at Skyview High School. And this is going to be put on by a lot of the people for CRC Facts. But they're going to have some guest speakers, John Charles, Joseph Courtwright, the Tiffany Couch, a forensic CPA.
Is this going to be on the CRC fact info website?
Yes, absolutely.
So people, because we down to a minute,
and you
folks want to get on
people
that.
should get a chance to see this and have a good understanding of literally what you're capable of realizing out of the advantages of not having a CRC project. You got to take a look at this. You got to think it through, because do you really want to pay $8 a trip to go across the river? And if you think that $8 a trip is going to affect the way people act, then maybe look at the businesses and commerce and what it will do to taking and decreasing the opportunity for us to create jobs and to create a healthy economy and feed our families. And I just believe that this is a key element, and people have forgot to take a look at that key element and what the bottom line effects are and how it's going to really hurt you.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks for coming on the program.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, I'll thank the crew. And we didn't have time for phone calls. We were having issues anyway. So we'll be back next week, because after that we're going to be off for 2 weeks. So we'll see you next week.